Most of the applause came from the back of the room now. Don't tell me. Okay, thank you very much, Brian. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and committee members, for allowing me to speak. I'm very concerned, and I would like to thank the previous speakers for supporting what I consider to be a reasonable comment. I'm really concerned that city planners have the power to refuse single lot severance based on the MOE E55 guidelines. I think we know that those guidelines, as Mr. Chowan pointed out very acutely, are past the due date. But I want to be very specific. I want to point out a guideline in E55 and show you how ludicrous the actual guideline is. It's respect, in particular, with respect to high levels of phosphate. The guideline permits 500 milligrams per liter in drinking water. That's under maximum, it's the maximum amount allowed. In the comment section on treatment, this is the statement. First of all, it says 500 milligrams per liter, and this is a statement. Possibly somebody could clarify this for me because I don't understand it. And I've read it several times. I read it to 3 people in the vehicle I came with. This is it. Not considered reasonably above level. I'll read it again. Not considered reasonably above level. Now, let me read to you. I want to go over this again. 500 milligrams per liter. But this is what the World Health Organization says, based on, and I'll read you the statement out of the World Health Organization, sulfate in drinking water. WHO, SDE, WSH 0304114. I can give people that citation if they wish to have it. I quote, "The existing data do not identify a level of sulfate in drinking water that is likely to cause adverse human health effects. The data from the liquid diet piglet study and from tap water studies with human volunteers indicate a laxative effect." Under the MOE guideline, it says laxative, which is very, there's a subtle difference, but there is a difference. A laxative effect is not a laxative, but let me go on. Concentrations at 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams per liter, but no increase in diarrhea, dehydration, or weight loss. It's absolutely crystal clear that whoever developed the MOE guidelines didn't bother to go to one of the most prestigious bodies in the world, the World Health Organization. It's very clear to me that the city planners didn't bother to do their homework either. And I take issue with a city planner who sits down with an MOE guideline and decides that a local resident of West Carleton has too much sulfate in his water because their new treatment, the water could have been treated, first of all. So they refuse him on the basis of too much sulfate in the water. What were they concerned about? He was going to have diarrhea? I don't need any more time. Okay. That's all I want to say.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Dave Barham. Dave, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Dave Barham. My company's Aquarius Technologies. I'm a water treatment consultant and service and equipment provider. I'm also a resident of West Carlton and I'm a long time rural resident. I'm here tonight to present the material that I provided to the coordinator for the committee to support the fact that all aesthetic objectives are treatable with readily available equipment that I have access to, and all of my peers and competitors in the area have the same access to. And I urge you to maybe contact them as well. So the material I've provided you has given most of the common items on the aesthetic objectives and gives treatment technologies available. Those are the most commonly used technologies that are available now to bring most common waters in the rural areas on dug and drilled wells down to those levels. The ministry, those guidelines for aesthetic objectives are aesthetic, they are just that. And basically it says that this is what good looking, tasting and smelling drinking water is. And objectionable is also a subjective and personal thing. So I might not find slightly eggy or pondy flavoured or smelling water objectionable. I do personally, not necessarily professionally, find either city water or municipal water containing chlorine and chloramine to be objectionable. I just don't like the taste of it. And I'd like to take this time, or any other time, if you have any questions, to ask me. I would be willing to answer them.
Okay, thanks very much. Are there any questions from committee? Seeing none, thanks very much. I appreciate it. And you raised some points that I think we all are aware of, perhaps on maybe not as professional level as you are, but we appreciate really those comments.
I'd also like to say that there are many other technologies other than what the material I've provided that are available, but not necessarily so commonly used. But it's all available. It's not out of date, and there's technologies either in control and new medias, and any combination of those will do the job.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Tim Brosha. Tim Brosha.
Oh, sorry. So first of all, thank you. You're the first person in 5 years that's pronounced my last name correctly. Good job. Just two quick things. I think most of the data has been covered. I just want to point out I support the removal of Procedure D55 from the consideration of separate private property in Ottawa. And I think it's a question of the role of the city versus the province. The province's position is clear on mandatory requirements and suggested requirements right now, so no reference to the province is required any further. Secondarily, it's all about the city making a decision on what guidelines to adopt and whether to adopt the mandatory requirements. My quick comment here is I do not expect City of Ottawa elected officials to use misapplied 18-year-old drinking water recommendations based on outmoded technology to create hardship for its citizens when all of Ontario mandatory requirements for safe drinking water have been met. So it's your role, guys. You got to make a decision. Thank you.
Tim number 2. Sorry about that.
Now, here's the time.
That wasn't point. I should have called you Tim 2. Just
My name is Tim Mount. I'll give a bit of background. I have my degree, an honors degree in geology. That won't come into play tonight at all, but I do have an understanding of this situation. What I want to focus on is just some clarification. I believe that there was a report from a PN for this particular lot severance? Was there a report from a PN on this for planning?
Sorry, you had a presentation.
Beg your pardon?
Just a presentation, not questions.
Okay. I'll go on the basis that I understand there was a report from a PN. So I would like to just clarify what we feel may be an issue here as well, is that when a person in the public goes through the process that is asked of them by planning and come up with a report from an engineer stating that this can be remediated, then it's our understanding that that should be good enough to let the severance stand. So I just want to bring that out to public attention, that it seems that even if you do have PN reports, that these are being set aside. Thank you.
Mr. Tom Black. You weren't going to be last, Tom, but I put you there because we wanted to save the best for last.
Thanks, Councillor.
Nice to see you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, Council. I have nothing to add as far as facts on this case. Obviously, everybody's done that. But I want you to look around the room at the people that are here and who they represent. These are the heart and soul of Carleton County. And for everyone here, there's 20 more out there that aren't here that agree with us. And we would like you to remember the Rural Summit and the effort we did go through to create this board. So we would have a pipeline into the city of Ottawa to the council. And we would ask you to vote accordingly, as you see here before you, to represent us to that council, even if it doesn't agree with the council. We want our voice heard in that council. That's what this whole point is about. I also would like to reiterate the fact that this is private property, and the D55 does not apply to private property. It is up to the landowners to look after their own water. Always has been. This is a socialism thing where the city has taken on the job of the residents that want to complain about their water. In the future, I know that the biggest guy in the yard is always the one that gets sued, and I understand that. But the more government we get, the worse things get. And the sooner we get back to private property and private responsibility, personal responsibilities, the better for the country. And I don't want Ottawa to be the lead in changing that. I want us to be leaders in responsibility for personal issues. One other thing I'd like to address is that some of the figures are flying back and forth to us, and the tone of whoever wrote that article to us suggesting that the Carleton landowners wanted to have dirty water. I don't think that was very nice, and I don't think it represents you guys, but somebody wrote that, and it was a smart aleck suggestion, and I don't think it should have been done. On the face of this, I would like to ask you folks to vote to represent us and what we're asking you to do here tonight, and that's to remove the D55 as a reason for canceling a lot, because it is not the job of the city to decide whether my water is good or bad. I can buy it in a bottle just like everybody else does, or whatever. So I would like to ask you guys to do that on our behalf. You can see who's here represented. This is not an issue between Jack McLaren and the city of Ottawa. These people are here from all over Ottawa. I know it can be suggested that those things happen, but we are here on our own accord, and we really believe this is a step into private property and what we represent. Thank you very much.
Okay, I lost tonight. So we've heard from the delegations. Do we have any questions or comments from Councillor Deputy Mayor Alston here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Mark, maybe a question for you. We heard earlier from Mr. Chow talking about our OP still in. Would it be possible at this time to reach out to the province? As much as we say it's not the province's responsibility, obviously it is a legislation was created in 1995 under Mike Harris's government, and believe it or not. I'm just going by the provincial policy statement was also signed in 1996 by our MPP. I'm just saying it's 28 years now.
Excuse me, just Councillor Deputy Mayor Alston here. I think that we should have a little more respect for the meeting. Just a moment. We knew the interest in this item. We took it on. We allowed you to have your say. You came up. We listened to you. So let's return that respect. So, Councillor Deputy Mayor Alston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mark, that act itself has been signed off since 1996. It's probably one of the few. It has not been revisited or add on or reviewed, if I'm correct. The 355 regulation. Do you believe, can we have asked now the province to identify a certain technology? Because we heard from Dave, who is in my community, who work with new technology, but it seems there's a lot of technology out there, and a lot of people ask which technology would. So obviously somebody is going to be able to say, this technology can work with this. Now, can that be in time for the OP review to bring that, if the minister agreed to bring that as a part of the other OP?
No. Mr. Chair, Mr. Chown started his presentation by noting that Official Fund Amendment number 150, which was adopted by Council back in December, is presently before the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing for review, modification, and approval. I'm not qualified to speak to how long it would take to update D55, but I know at the outside, the Minister's decision on OPA 150 has to come by June. And my expectation, even as a layperson, is that it wouldn't be possible to update D55 in a 2-month period. With respect to the prospect that Mr. Chown also raised in his presentation about modifying OPA 150 in respect of D55, modifications are used for two purposes, Mr. Chair, if there are too many modifications to 150. The first case is where the Minister disagrees with the city with respect to the implementation of provincial policy. So if the Minister were to disagree with the city as to OPA 150 representing provincial policy, yes, the Minister would have the ability to modify OPA 150 in that regard. The second area of modification is where what I would call technical errors have been discovered in the official plan since its adoption. And that happens, and certainly there were modifications made in that regard to OPA 176 back in 2009. The ministerial modification period is not one that is intended for a new policy direction. If that direction were taken, the appropriate course of action would be not through a modification to OPA 150, but rather through a full OPA process, in my opinion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Also, Mr. John asked a question. We had asked an art committee 2 years ago for Mr. Michel Coney to work with the ministry staff and on reviewing that guideline and also on the new technologies available out there to recognize a specific technology, not us, but the ministry to. So, and now, if Mr. Chown's date is correct, it's been 2 years now. Have we heard back from the ministry? Do we have a report on it? Any identification to any technology?
Mr. Chair, unfortunately, Mr. Kearney is not able to be here this evening. I have spoken with Mr. Kearney in months gone by about the status of the guidelines. At that time, they were still works in progress, but there was no defined date provided.
2 years. 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions?
Point of personal privilege.
Sorry, Adele. Thank you. Mr. Mark, this, I don't know if you've seen this from this item in regard to that this IDP communication response to inquiry being included as a regular item on the agenda for the subsequent meeting. Have you seen this? So we've heard the delegations, we've heard the staff, and so we are at a position now to deal with this item. One, I guess there are two options. One, to vote on the issue. The second item is that we ask the province to review the
Come on. You can make the decision.
so we have that option. Is there anyone wishing to move a motion to deal with this D55? Seeing none, excuse me. I have before me a letter that I prepared, and I'm going to read it to you. This is the direction that this committee is going to be following. This is addressed to Mr. James Bradley, Minister of Environment, 11th Floor, Ferguson Block, Toronto. I'm writing to you in my capacity to chair the Ottawa Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. Among other responsibilities, the committee oversees the approval of development proposals within the rural part of our city, much of which is on private wells and septic systems. This is a responsibility of our committee. City staff and council take seriously as it impacts the long-term sustainability of our 26 rural villages, as well as our rural and agricultural lands. The City of Ottawa has for many years required that new development proposals ranging from severances to subdivisions meet the Ontario Drinking Water Objective Standards and Guidelines. Proposals almost follow the MOE D55 procedures, as this too forms the basis of our decision on making around water quality. We often hear from proponents that there have been significant technological advancements for water treatment since the D55 guidelines were last revised in 1996. We hear that these guidelines are no longer valid or that we should be allowing treatment for health-related parameters. Our position and our recommendations that we have available, we continue to look to the Ministry of the Environment as a subject matter expert on water quality parameters This being said, we also share concerns that these guidelines have not been updated for 18 years. On behalf of the City of Ottawa's Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, I would respectfully request that the Ministry update the Ontario Drinking Water Objectives, Standards and Guidelines and the D55 procedure to ensure that it reflects the best available science and that the most current technologies available for the treatment of aesthetic and health-related parameters. So is it the wish of this committee that I forward this letter to the Minister and the appropriate MPPs from our area
You can make the
deal with the
decision.
D55 issue?
Chair,
Yes.
would be
Councilor
possible,
Deputy Mayor Ashton Curry.
would be possible, because earlier my colleague, Councillor Moffitt, he moved a motion to support our colleague in other municipalities. Would that be possible with your permission to send it to all the surrounding municipality and have them add their voice?
You're just making it worse.
I would look to the committee. I certainly don't see that being a problem. Also, this letter could be forwarded to the Rural Ontario Municipal Association to deal with issues across the province to have their comments and support for that. So is it the will of this committee that this letter be sent to the minister?
I don't know when you wrote the letter, but I think you should make a decision on behalf of the people that own land in West Carleton and all throughout this county. Sir.
We are not making a decision. We're sending off this letter to have the province.
When did you write the letter?
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
When did you write the letter?
This letter will be sent off to.
When?
This is for nothing. I'm going to adjourn this meeting.
This is a big show.
Why, my God.
Smoke and mirrors.
You manipulate this crowd. Why? Are you not capable of predicting?
Everybody in this room is a taxpayer. The taxpayers